Hello friends. So today we're going to talk about the offlane. And I want to talk about lane theory a little bit before we get into that. I know this is oftentimes a pet peeve of mine whenever people try to be a little bit too abstract, but I think this is important for playing good Dota. I think it's important to understand the goals and expectations of each individual lane so that whenever things get a little crazy, you can make good decisions. You can adapt well and choose what you want to do and how to play the game, how to maintain a plan. If someone who doesn't understand the game quite as well tries to just memorize everything, which a lot of people do, kind of leads to not as good decision making, and these people get very uncomfortable whenever the game goes crazy. Like if you play a game that's not real Dota, as someone might say, or just not going according to plan, maybe you're forced into an odd lane, maybe you pick a weird hero choice from where you are, these people just tend to tilt instead of being able to make good choices to get the game back how you want it, resembling a state you want it to be in.
Go.
So, basic theory, mid laners, right? We'll start with that lane. Generally, these heroes are very good late game. If you give them a full set of unlimited gold, full item build, they'll be very strong, able to kill most heroes, maybe able to kill multiple heroes, enemy heroes. That's like the general concept of carrying a game, is that you can pull more than one hero's worth of weight. And in addition, these heroes have to be good early game. They have to be really good at winning a lane, because they will be in direct confrontation with another hero who also will be good at early game fighting. So if these heroes are terrible at level 1, then they will be, losing out on laning ability because of it, very directly. And also they, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times are longer range heroes, and because of that might have maybe a little bit less in the category of mobility. That hero tends to do okay mid lane because you're so close to the tower, It's hard to get out of position because with your long range you're able to exert pressure over the creeps, and even at farthest you're still going to be just a few steps away from the tower. So a hero like Shadow Fiend, for example, who could be very weak, is always just a short walk away from this tower. In direct contrast, on the side lanes, it might be where a hero like Anti-Mage might be a little bit more comfortable. Short range, high mobility. If he's out of position, he can blink out. If the opponent gets out of position, they can blink in. Little errors like this can be exploited by the Anti-Mage, and he can curtail any damage of any error he makes, and it matters more because there's so much distance between the two towers. You can get a lot more out of it, whereas in theory, like an Anti-Mage middle, you can try to imagine, would not do well, because even if the opponent does get out of position, maybe he's still around whenever you have 4 creeps and he has none, you blink on him, you get some hits, but you're only going to get very few before he's already in range of his tower, and you have to run away. So, that's why you're going to see a hero like Anti-Mage on the side lane, for the most part. Nearly always, actually. So the safe lane farmer, like an Anti-Mage, generally very good with the full 6 slotted items. However, because this often worse at level 1 fights. Maybe they are just gonna lose most battles at level 1. So what you do is these are gonna be heroes that mostly focus on getting creep kills. If they're terrible at fighting at low levels, you choose to avoid this weakness by just not fighting low levels. You get most of your net worth by killing creeps, you tailor your item build to be faster and better at killing creeps, and then you go into the mid game with as minimal interaction between heroes as possible, and just come out with a huge net worth advantage and play to your strength. You'll be very good with items, so you don't really fight until you have the items that you need. On the opposite side, there's the offlaner, who's going to be heroes that are very good at low levels. Similar to mid laner, just very, very good at level 1 fights. And these are going to be heroes that may or may not have good item synergy with their hero, but even then it doesn't matter so much, because the items they're going to choose are more likely to be items that are utility items. Like, we'll say Lotus Orb or Guardian Greaves, for example. These are very good team fighting items, good at fighting heroes, but not necessarily that good at farming creeps. So these items are going to allow you to do really well in team fights, but you know, they don't really boost your farming speed, and that's okay for the offlaner because they're not expected to farm all that much. They're expected to be in battles, be influencing the battles. They're expecting to be the playmaker a lot of times. These heroes should always be at least semi-useful without any farm at all. So, you know, a hero like Slardar, you know, tons of times the offlaner needs a blink, but beyond that, not too much. Like a Slardar can blink in, stomp, ult, and then leave, and that's good. He doesn't really need the ability to right-click well. In contrast, like Anti-Mage, not so good in the offlane. If Anti-Mage has no items, he's just always going to be useless. He's going to blink in and die. There's not much an Anti-Mage can provide if he's super far behind. You know, not much utility to the Anti-Mage hero. So, this is important because let's take an example of one of my friends. He goes and he plays Lifestealer, and you know, he would go into the safe lane and he would pick an item. He would go like Orchid, and you know, he's saying like, oh, I can kill heroes faster with it. Not super great, right? This Orchid, while yeah, in theory you probably do need some lockdown to get good solo kills, but that's not the job of your safe laner. So he would just lose a lot of games when he played that hero because he would get behind, his team would get behind in net worth. This hero might be a little bit better at pickoffs, but a lot worse at farming. And that's not really the job of a safe laner, is to get all these pickoffs. Alright. Like I said, this sort of understanding is very good for adapting, you know? Let's say there's a Storm Spirit. This is a common example. Storm Spirit player who generally goes mid, and he doesn't really understand the different roles, so he shoved in the safe lane because someone else called mid, and he already locked in, whatever. So he's playing this safe lane, and you have to be able to adapt to the safe lane and what kind of the job of the safe laner is. So you're going to want to be building a more farm-centric Storm, which in like realistic examples is going to mean more points in Static Remnant, fewer points in the stun, and maybe going an item like Bloodstone first if you might normally go Orchid first. You know, Orchid, okay at farming, but the Bloodstone's going to give you much more regen, much more health regen too. This is important because if you are not farming, then, you know, this concept people always talk about, oh, space created, like that generally means that there's fighting happening, and if you are in an area fighting, that means somewhere else that there's no fighting happening. The idea being that if there's no fighting happening where your safe laner is, he's getting a lot of uninterrupted farm. Well, if as a safe laner, you're a Storm Spirit and you're just ganking nonstop, it doesn't matter how much safe space or space is being created, no one's farming it. So your team is just falling behind in net worth passively. And it ends up seeming some battle will happen where you lose it and you blame it on your allies and you think it was a bad battle, but in reality, it was inevitable. Over time, you're just losing out on net worth because no one's farming your jungle, no one's farming your top lane, no one's pushing towers. You know, you're just getting more and more behind every second that goes by. So, something else worth mentioning is that this doesn't always apply, all of this doesn't always apply super well to pro games. You know, you have different heroes, you'll see like Queen of Pain go in a safe lane, or like, you know, Drow Ranger who doesn't really want to do all that jungle farming, things like that. And I want to say that basically offlaning doesn't really apply super well to these pro games, and I wanted to choose this replay as an illustration of that. I don't know if you've been watching, but we have Anti-Mage, starting top lane, teleported to bottom lane nearly instantly, teleported top lane again, huge lane swaps between this Anti-Mage, and on the other hand, you've got the Luna and Rubik, because OG wants to have the Anti-Mage just farming away happily, and AF picked this tri-lane to contest the Anti-Mage farm. They've swapped lanes multiple times, their entire lanes have swapped on both sides in order to better favor themselves the matchup. That's good play. You want a good matchup, but that sort of thing is also just very unrealistic for your pub games, you know? Your team is not going to be on the same page with you switching lanes, so if you're an anti-mage and you just decide, F it, I'm going by, you know, it's not going to fly very well. People are going to be upset with you. So, because of that, pro game's not always the best way to learn certain lanes, especially the off lane, because they're often clowny stuff like this. So, well, for the rest of this, we're going to be using maybe pro players, but playing pub games, because the meta is a little bit more defined. Pro games are always constantly shifting in order to better adapt to the situation. Okay, so we're going to be following the Slardar player, Took You Seriously, aka Moon Meander. You guys might know that name better. He's playing in the off lane. He's playing with his pub player, the Omni Knight. First thing the Omni Knight does And look at this, by the way. Buys these quick items, buys the Observer Ward, immediately teleports out. He got these other items on the Courier because, you know, you can use the Courier. You can think about the rest of the items later, but he wanted to get out here as soon as possible to get this down. It becomes very hard to get these wards down if you go after the opponents are all set up, like after the Rubik and, you know, the supports and the Faceless are here in position to block the offlane jungle, or the offlane warding. So he goes as quick as possible. In all honesty, you can probably get away with just running there quickly in a little bit lower ranked games because people are generally just slower overall, right?
30 seconds to show.
I've noticed that people start forming their positions better. That starts at about 5k. Below that, if you just run out there quickly, you can get in before their heroes get there. A lot of times people spend some time in the beginning deciding what items to go, arguing with their allies over picks, whatever. People are quicker at high levels, obviously. So this Omni Knight has to TP out to get there ahead of time, right? But you have to be quick. That's the thing. If you also think about your items and stuff, you know, that's no good. You just have to go there as soon as the game starts. You have to buy the ward. So I think the ward's important. It gives this ward, this position, gives a dual purpose. It's inside this box. It blocks this small camp and also provides pretty good vision. You know, we can see the area that Dire supports might be coming from that way. Okay, and then he goes back and picks up the rest of it from his Courier and gets ready to block. We have the Slaughter who's considering contesting if he doesn't see enemy heroes. Sometimes the enemy heroes might all be bottom lane. If it's free, he can try for it. It's not free here, right? So, quickly to look over what the lane might be. Of course, this is, you know, something we want to do every game too. So, we can kind of see, but assuming we're not looking at them. Someone's got to be safe lane. Probably Faceless and Sniper are the two main choices. Someone's got to be mid lane. Really no other common mids here, so Sniper more likely to be mid lane, him more likely to be safe lane, and then this is for sure the off lane of the team because of that, which leads these two to also be safe lane support, so it's a tri-lane. These two are both garbage heroes in the off lane, being very slow and squishy, easy to kill heroes. Not good in the off lane, not good in a lane where you by nature are at a disadvantage. You know, these heroes are better in an offensive or a tri-lane sort of scenario where it'll be at an advantage, because if they get run down, they don't run very well. Okay, so items wise, this is about as much tankiness as you can get out of the starting items. The Stout Shield's very good against their lineup. If you look at their damage, it's gonna be right clicks, right clicks, right clicks. You have a nuke from him, you have a nuke from him, but these are gonna be small nukes, so level 1, you know. Most of the damage is going to be right clicks. It's not like a Skywrath where he can just go through a whole mana pool. You know, this hero has to charge up his nuke by getting right clicks. And then let's have a look at what he's doing. You see they did the block we talked about in the last chapter where you put the range creep first. He's actually countering that. He's going out ahead. He's just tanking damage so that the range creep stops. The melee creeps pass him. So this is like the counter block, the counter to that range creep out ahead block that we talked about. That might be a reason to block all of the creeps instead of just the melee creeps instead of the range creep. Okay, so first thing we can see, he goes up, immediately starts tanking damage. He knew these heroes were here. He knew he was going to get some damage, but, you know, maybe fights a little bit back. Something important to realize is, as the offlane, you can't expect to get good farm. You might get some farm, and that's honestly the goal. If you can stay in XP range and get the occasional, you know, creep or occasional deny, that's your goal. All that stuff we talked about last little clip was talking about the goals of the lane. Safe lane is to get a ton of farm. If you can mess with that as the offlaner, that's great. As an extra bonus, you can get some farm yourself. Notice that every time this Faceless decides to go fight, he's actually just missing CS. He's like, oh, I'm going to go right-click this Slaughter. He's thinking, obviously, if he gets first blood, that's well worth it. But if he doesn't, he's just going to be missing CS. So this, even though it's just them losing out on lane, is costing the opponents some CS, you know? We missed 2 already. We can see it reflected here. We can watch the Faceless Void versus their safe laner. Backing up a little bit. This choice of the Fairy Fire. This is inefficient health per gold. If you just look at it, it's purely health per gold. If you were to compare like Fairy Fire to Healing Salve, right? 75 for 75 HP versus 110 for 400 HP. You can clearly see like 1 times versus about 4 times. You know, it's a big difference. The main advantage of the Fairy Fire, the 2 damage is nice, but that's kind of on the side. The main advantage of Fairy Fire is you can use it in battle. If they're able to full to 0 you, then Healing Salve doesn't do basically anything in battle. Versus the Fairy Fire is going to give you 75 HP. It's going to be burst heal. And we can actually see that in action in just a couple moments. We already saw it, but if you missed it, we'll watch it again. So we have the Slaughter going up, taking some damage, backing up a little bit, and then he gets slowed again. Again, notice how their draft actually is very good against this lane. This is a hero that has pretty good armor. He's really tanky. He's got the stout shield. He's a melee hero, so he can get the stout shield. Very good against them, mostly right-click lineups. Drafting, as important as it is in the other lanes, might be even more important in the off lane, because if you pick a bad draft, you're just gonna get nothing. The off lane, nothing is taken for granted. You know, the safe lane, even with a weak hero early on, you're probably gonna get some stuff. Most safe laners are weak, but not this. You know, mid lane, maybe you can get some safe CS, but again, not the off lane so much. So we're gonna see him chase down. They're gonna get a lot of right clicks on him. They're gonna seemingly kill him, but not. You know, he barely gets away with the fairy fire, just enough. Good thing he picked that. Both of these heroes just took a huge amount of damage, but he's able to escape. He's able to go back up and get back into the lane. Alright. Just gotta get whatever CS he can. He's slowly wearing through these supports' health and regen themselves, and that's basically the first goal. You can't directly mess with the enemy safe laner initially. You can only indirectly mess with him by hoping he misses CS to chase you down. Obviously, you don't want to feed gold. If you did get that kill, like I mentioned, that's worth way more than a CS, so you don't want to actually die. But this is decent play. You know, he's doing well in the offlane. Okay, first item, we see a boots of speed. That's the first big difference between offlaning and safe laning. Is this faceless, he's not going to get boots of speed first. You know, we talked about all that last chapter. He's going to be getting sustain items. Poor Man's Shield makes him take less damage, lets him put out more damage. Ring of Health, Mask of Madness, Mask of Death, whatever he wants to be building this game. Kind of depends on his build, but he's going to getting sustain. Versus the offlaners, they're not going to get barely any sustain. They're going to get all items that just like purely focus on doing as well as he can with what he has, right? Say he gets harassed down, he's just going to go healing. But at least he has boots. Versus, like, if he were to try to save up for a Ring of Health, A, he might never get there, but B, or like, let's say he went the Ring of Regen first. That's a better example, because he's going to be going for this Tranquil Boots. Gets healed by the Omni Knight, stomps, again, just barely gets away. But he's Slardar. This is a decent choice. This is one of the reasons Slardar's a nice offlaner. He's able to boost home, TP back in. He's gonna miss some CS for this, right? The Omni Knight happens to go home too. Maybe in retrospect it would have been nicer if the Omni Knight had just stayed and leeched and then traded, but maybe they want to have both heroes at full health at the same time, who knows. In any case, they're gonna miss some CS. They had some of their own creeps die when no one's in experience range, so they're gonna be put behind. I went and counted earlier, there's about 6 creeps that they missed in general. That's a lane and a half, and you're going to be seeing this deficit in XP. But, you know, they're both level 2, and the enemies are level 3. And that's with the lane split 3 ways. They're still all higher level than these 2 heroes. However, whatever, that's just how it is in the offlane. You can't always expect to win the lane, you just have to get what you can. That's why you don't invest in regen early. You just do whatever you can with the gold you have. That also lets you to be a little bit more mobile, right? If he had decided to put a bunch of points or a bunch of money into like regen there, like say he got 2 tangos, then he can't really gank. You know, if the situation arises where he needs to make a play mid, he doesn't have boots. You know, the off lane, a lot of your regen is just gonna come from healing. All right, so item choice there. It almost seems a little surprising given what I've been talking about. This is more of a get right click laning stuff. So a couple things on that. First of all, if we watch what happened here when he first teleported in, he's jumped on, stomps, gets some decent damage on each of them, backs away. We're going to notice that Rubik's out of mana. We're going to notice that Visage halfway out of mana. Also, both of them low HP, both of them completely out of regen. Importantly, the Slardar can see. You know, that's a big part of this ward, is you can kind of see what's happening. He could see this hero walk up, he could see him maybe stop, maybe put down a ward. You can see them both walking to the base. So that means that Slardar knows he has time. He was initially building this Tranquil Boots, but you can see he changed it to the Quelling Blade. You know, why is that? It's because for a short amount of time, he's going to be able to actually last hit, right? And he does not need HP. His HP is topped off. Item choice is so much more than what items you get. What order you get it is incredibly important. If you think about it, technically all item builds kind of converge by late game. You know, you're gonna on the Slardar, you're probably gonna get the same within reason, same items as most anyone else. You'd like to have, you know, Blink Dagger, maybe a Force Staff, maybe like a BKB, a AC, like all these different items. These are nice items, sure, but if you get them in the wrong order, you're just not gonna get them. You're gonna never get to your Blink Dagger because you're gonna lose a lane horribly, that sort of thing. So whatever you can do to squeeze out any advantages. So here we see him getting this Quelling Blade over a Tranquil Boots that wouldn't have actually helped. He's at full health. Tranquil Boots provides no advantage if you're at full health. Okay. He still might get Tranquil Boots, but it's not going to be until after he takes damage. So that's how you choose your items in lane, is you go based on what you need in this immediate moment. You know? Missed a stun, kind of sucks, whatever. Going back to last hitting. Good. Getting these CS, these are so important in the off laner, maybe even more important in the safe laner, because getting free CS, like these are free, right? They're nearest tower, he's got the full wave, they're not going to be contested. So important you actually get them. Alright, so you can see what's the next item he picks. Again, didn't go the Ring of Regen, went the Magic Stick. Why is that? Magic Stick, by the way, consider it mostly a mana item. Sure, it gives you the health and it gives you that burst heal, but for the most part, this is like the cheapest mana you can get per gold. Other contenders might be the Teardrop, but that's at the home base. You have to use the Courier for that. For all the reasons that I described last video, you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. Get the Magic Stick. So he goes in. Unfortunately, Faceless Void, just Bash God, got a lot more damage than he might have been expecting. So he gets damaged a lot, backs off. However, he's got an ally teleporting in. He escapes, but his ally is actually able to get the pick off on the Rubik. You know, that sort of stuff doesn't always happen, but it does happen occasionally. The important thing for him is to not feed. Of course, the trade is his ally teleported in from the safe lane, so the Batrider went nuts on that. So it goes. Alright, so he's going to go home. He's gonna buy a TP scroll, as imagined, and you might think, well, what's his next item? Might it be Tranquil Boots? Still no, because he's gonna be topped off on HP. You don't need it immediately. This Iron Talon, you know, obviously it's gonna help. Moon, I noticed, tends to get Iron Talon a little bit earlier than other players. Like, I could see other players going something different. I don't know what, but Iron Talon right now doesn't give a huge advantage over just having the, Quelling Blade and the Ring of Protection separately, which is what he already had. But Moon likes it, you know. This tweet, for example, you know, he's just a guy who likes Iron Talon, and it really does. It's for good reason. I'm not saying he's wrong. He's one of the best offlaners in the whole whatever. It opens up a lot of doors for you. If suddenly this lane were to become very inhospitable, which happens, it's the offlane, then you have this whole extra camp that you can basically farm that you couldn't otherwise. Putting some damage on the Faceless Void. We noticed a little bit ago that these two heroes were missing. I think we saw one of them show bottom. He's gonna, you know,
in bad shape.
Pressure to Faceless Void. This is an important thing to understand too. As this side lane goes, this is like this little camp where you can pull, and like it's kind of like this wild card, because you're gonna pull it and it's gonna take some of the creeps off, and it's gonna take maybe some of the creeps from the opposing team off, and suddenly it's like this extra objective, and it's kind of like hard to understand how it'll go, and it's very difficult to predict who's gonna get the CS. Last video we talked about pulling at the 52 to like stack it, and when your creeps are ahead, you can control it in that manner if you're strong enough to kill all the creeps. If you're a safe laner, strong enough to stand here and cut off the off lane. But notice he just went for the pull, even though he's not able to do that. He just is doing this, and it's just kind of creating chaos, basically. This is a thing you like to do if you're behind in a lane. You just want to make the lane weird and chaotic, because that probably means you're going to get XP or gold from something. So the Omni Knight kind of pulls this, he kind of encourages it. Suddenly, one of them has to go back, so they split up. This is a reasonable thing to do. Omni Knight takes the XP and gold from here, and you'll see the Slardar tries to take the XP from gold from there. Iron Knight wanders away, but then kind of wanders back in time for the XP to drop. Misses the last hit. So yeah, you can see how this lane is suddenly, the lane's weird, right? They had a full, the Radiant had a full wave going to the tower, it died to nothing. Suddenly the Scourge has got a double, or sorry, I said those backwards. The Dire had a full lane go to the tower. The Radiant's gonna have this double wave because it's gonna push up to the Faceless Void. It's gonna mean that Faceless Void's gonna have a little bit of farm he can do under the tower safely now. Okay. So, Slardar, next items he got, he already had this. Next item he got is the Fused Ray Drop. Once he's able to figure out that the Courier is free, once his mid's okay with it, gets the Infused Rage Drop. This is just one of those items that's just incredibly strong. In general, as a general rule, and we'll talk more about this in the items chapter, but it's always a mistake to have open item slots if you are able to fill them up. Certain items are so cheap and you get value out of them that you just need to not ever have item slots open. This is one of the extremely cheap items that gives you a decent amount of value. It gives mana, of course, and then effectively it gives you help. So at this point we can see Moon, unfortunately, is getting a lot of Boston major lag. He disconnects, reconnects. He actually spends the rest of like the next few minutes just jungling exclusively, probably due to lag. He doesn't go to any lane even though the opportunity arises. So we're going to go to the next game actually. Okay, for this game we're watching the offlane Magnus, played by Universe. He's walking over to the rune. We see in this game, his ally Luna gets picked off immediately, before the creeps even spawn by a good margin. That obviously changes what he might be looking at in terms of what he's going to be laning against, but also it means he can potentially contest the rune. You know, he's got 3 heroes that showed bottom. Actually, we just see right now, while it's paused, the 4th hero, the Silencer, is also showing on a minimap, which means it's just Morphling. And he can actually bully the Morphling at level 1 a good bit, because Morphling's got a ton of stats shifted towards agility. He's got like 300 HP. Magnus has got the stout shield, so we can bully him a little bit. We can actually probably try to take this rune. So we're going to see him go ahead and do that. Punches the Morphling a little bit. They actually trade 1 tango each. He's punching the Morphling a little bit, then he sees the Pudge start walking towards him, just a little bit below him. You know, might as well walk away. The one thing about that, though, that engagement, he got the bounty rune, but he did not get the chance to place his ward there, okay? So he's got this ward in his inventory still, and he hasn't placed it yet. So he's going to hang on to it until the time comes when it seems like a reasonable time to place it. Okay, so for right now, he's just going to go for a couple last hits, but I don't know if you guys caught on a minimap, he's being ganked. You know, we got the Rubik, we got the Pudge, walking away, you know, he's worried about dying. This is important. Universe plays it perfectly. How do you play this, right? The reflex is to just skewer away. But, rule number 3, respect your opponents. This Rubik could just kill you. If you skewer away, he could pick you up and set you down. That would cancel you skewer, and he would die for sure. Okay? Now, skewer has an animation. Your hero kind of winds up before he goes. A reasonable Rubik with a stun, a telekinesis that has no animation, could be expected to get that done. You might be thinking, in your games, whatever, you skewer, you'll probably get away, why not just go for it? Right, but they might get it anyways. You know, your enemies are not going to make the mistakes whenever you need them to. And, who knows, maybe they just do it on accident. Maybe they get the telekinesis just because that's when they happen to click. In any case, he knows that he's going to make it to the tower barely, so he just waits on the telekinesis. Telekinesis comes out, and because of kind of the way that worked, he was telekinesis behind the Pudge, actually was able to get the Pudge killed. Pudge did commit suicide. That is unfortunate for Universe. That's like a huge deal. The difference between that suicide and getting a kill at level 1 matters so much. It's, you know, really unfortunate that Pudge was able to get that suicide. Alright, so we see the Rubik walking towards him. He's going to go on him a little bit. He's going to get some damage. Rubik still has his telekinesis off cooldown. Universe sees that also, immediately backs off. Universe eats a tango, whatever. Kind of just trading some right clicks. Note that we still haven't been able to place this ward. You know, obviously it's something we want to be doing, but just this early game's been a little chaotic already, right? And so we're going to be placing it, but as of right now, we actually don't need to. Pudge just showed bottom lane. You can see him on a minimap. Obviously the middle lane's the players there, and Rubik's here, so we actually can see everyone, so there's not really any urgency to it. And for right now, through these like triple pull sort of techniques that we already talked about, we saw Matumbaman doing it in chapter 3. He's doing it very well there, right? He's able to keep pulling the aggro off. He even these two play very aggressive, so he's even able to pull them into his tower range. Because he was able to do all that and not die, he's actually indirectly denying the Morphling some last hits. You know, so he's doing that to pull the aggro. In the meanwhile, we just watched what that happens there. But Morphling misses 2 last hits. It's pretty good, you know. Morphling still is ahead of the Luna, but that's only because Luna's having a horrible time in her safe lane. You know, dying under a lot of pressure. All right. So he's gonna use his last tango, and then he's just gonna chill and basically soak XP for just a little bit longer before going back to heal. We're gonna see him get a level in Empower early on, and we're gonna see him combine it with an early Iron Talent to get like really good last hitting power. But also, I could see someone wanting to get the early levels in Shockwave to get the last hit there. He actually could have gotten like one more last hit in that wave if he had the Shockwave. So here we're going to see the Iron Talon come out and see that maybe he got more last hits with the Iron Talon. So these are just different things to consider. I noticed, you might notice that a lot of these high-level offlaners do prioritize getting the Iron Talon very early. Like the instant they think they reasonably might be getting CS. Because of basically that. you know, this Morphling, he's watching, he's trying to deny, and watch, he pulls this creep off the lane, Iron Talon hits it, and it's already dead. Morphling's like walking towards it to deny it, but it's already been dead for a second, because you can kind of burst down these CS. Even though you're not using this as like killing neutral creeps faster, you can, you know, and you have it for that if you need to, but this is like an alternate use. It's like bursting down lane creeps. You can get creeps without getting them denied. You see him place the ward, it's down, it's in a good spot. It's in this spot. Notice that this doesn't block, obviously. So he actually has this box open to pull himself if need be. And here he is. Does the pull. Quick pull trick from Universe. We talk a lot about pulling at the exact time, 52, 53, but this is something that's important with this. Like, everyone started memorizing this 52 number because that was the classic number that you pull for the side camp, the very small camp. And then it just turns out that the 52 is also the number if you want to pull this to the safe lane spot. You know, obviously it's a little different pulling it to over here, but the key is, even if you mess up the timing a little bit, you actually have all these different angles to work with, right? You can pull it here. If you pull it like a little late, you can pull it upwards. You can pull it all the way up, you know. And we're going to see Universe do a little technique. If you kind of miss the pull a little bit, watch this. He grabs the range creep. He grabs like one or two of the melee creeps, but then he needs to get the rest. We see this creep is going to attack him. In the same way that creeps pull aggro on heroes, they also pull it, you know, on neutral creeps. These will go aggro onto, so watch. It hits, instantly these all turn to go fight him, okay? That's how you can kind of like mend pulls that you might have mistimed a little bit. So we're going to see Universe actually use this combo, use the Iron Talon to hit it, to get it down quickly, and then this huge amount of damage he has. You know, it's already up to 78 plus the 40%. You know, he's actually able to last it very comfortably. This is because even though earlier on at level 2 he had a Wave and Empower, now he's got the Empower and Iron Talon basically gives him a poor man's Battle Fury. So this is nice. This is what you want to do, and this is important. As an offlane, you know, we always talk about how rare it is to get to CS. If this ever happens to you where you have this one-on-one matchup, you need to be getting the CS. It's just as important in safe lane because, interestingly, this lane right now, this offlane, is the easiest lane in the game, you know? We've got the mid lane, it's always a hard matchup. I guess jungle, if you consider that a lane, but he's not being harassed at all. This is actually the least pressured lane right now. So you have to do what you can to get the most out of it. Very similar to what you would do in a safe lane. So the Magnus, he's nuked a couple times to use his mana, teleported home, got some items. Now this is him walking back to the lane. He's watching his safe lane. This is his player perspective. He sees his safe lane just getting run over. He obviously can't do anything, right? His TP's on cooldown. There's no way you could get there in time by walking. But that's like kind of a mindset of the offlane player. You need to be remaining a global presence if at all possible. Just have some idea of how the lanes are going. If we look at the score, horribly. And also keep in mind that, you know, if it is possible, we want to be teleporting there. He comes back to the lane, he's got full mana again, and you notice how he's actually able to put a lot of pressure on this Morphling, and then suddenly, good rotation from the Ember, they're actually able to pick up a kill on him. Do some tree juking. Not even because he has a huge amount of mana regen. Sure, he's got the Infused Rain Drop, which is a good amount, but it's not a huge amount. But just because he's kept refilling his mana through the fountain, he's actually able to get enough mana to spam down this Morphling. Okay, so you see here, they're diving. Again, he can do nothing, right? He doesn't have enough mana to teleport this time, but he's still watching it. He still just wants to be aware. We see big play, picking up a few kills there. So he's got the Arcane Boots. He's going to continue doing just all the same normal stuff. Pulling this, keeping the creep equilibrium where he wants it, using his nukes to harass, using his nukes to farm. He's actually going to, you know, get as many CS as he can. He actually nukes and goes back to heal his mana again, just to keep his mana topped off. And watch this again. He's walking home. He's healing up his mana, and he's actually watching still. He's keeping tabs on his lane. He looks mid. Just a moment. Mid starts getting ganked. He decides not to go help because it's hopeless. You know, he's watching it, and then the instant punch hits that hook. It's over. You know, he decides he's not going to go. Goes back to the lane again. It's good to do these ganks, but, you know, if you can't make it, like your teleport's on cooldown, to just get what you can, obviously. And if you can make it, but it'd be worthless, then just get what you can. He's actually pretty much won this lane. Now, with that kill of the Morph, he's got enough items here. He's got them, you know, Infused Raindrop, Morph hasn't even started working on. Plenty of health regen, because this is never used up from earlier. Got the Arcane Boots. He's actually basically won this lane. As an offlaner, getting free farm in a lane is rare. It's very rare. So if you have this, why not just keep it? So we're going to see him actually just put a lot of pressure on this Morphling and just own the lane. Morphling actually responds by just bailing. He just punts the lane and is like, okay, I'm going to go do, go home, do neutrals, do whatever else, because he respects the fact that the Magnus has won the lane. If you win the lane, this is whenever you do what you can with the lane. It's so rare to win the lane as the off lane that you need to use it. So you see, this is still his player perspective. He's been looking bottom, he's been looking mid, but he's just not going to those two lanes. Okay? He's got free farm, he's gonna abuse it. You have this Blink Dagger goal. You know, everyone knows about that. If you're mag, you want to get the Blink Dagger. But what's he doing instead? Or, you know, he's not ganking without it, because what's he doing? He's pushing the tower. This is just a quick side note. You notice how he's just pushing the tower, like, even though it was fortified, but he could have backed off and like let his creeps come in, but that just slows it down a little bit. You never know. Maybe he backs off, goes back here, 2 teleports come in, suddenly it's like very hard for him to get this tower. This ensures he gets the tower. He's got a healing salve, which he's about to pop. Guarantee yourself the tower kill. Tower kills are worth a huge amount of money. You know, if you can get him, you want to get him. That will be the single fastest way to get to the Blink Dagger, is this tower, you know? You have to guarantee like 2 kills to be the equivalent of a tower gold. Not to mention, this gives you gold to your allies. So anytime you win a lane, your main objective, or at least a large objective, should be to try to take the tower, if the opponents totally abandon it. Alright, so we got the tower. He's just grabbing some free farm, goes in the jungle, you know, gets a little bit more CS. He does eventually grab his Blink Dagger. And then at that point, basically the laning stage is ended. And I just want to show you this quick play. Unfortunately, this Rubik, who has been wrecking, continues to wreck him. But we're going to see all these heroes are here. It's 11:50, kind of an early timing. He's about to, you know, debut his Blink Dagger. Blink in, RP, instant pickup from the Rubik. Wrecked. He escapes. Rubik he's not even like a hack or whatever. Those do exist, by the way, but if we see, it's legit. He walks up. So for people who don't know what this is, the way you do is you pre-target, and for instant disables like this, Lion's Hex, Shadow Shaman's Hex, it will work instantly. It'll happen faster than a Magnus RP. So he sees him on a minimap, he instantly looks down, and look, he actually targets. He knows Magnus has the Blink Dagger, that's what he's going for. You see him actually walking into tower range because he just knew that's what's going to happen. So if you have it pre-targeted, your hero is already selected on that goal. Walks up, gets it, you know, goes for the FU spell steal, even though this is not like the best Rubik ability without Blink. Whatever. Anyways, so laning stage over. Alright, one last very short clip. So this is Universe again on a Nerubian Assassin. This is the Rubik's point of view. So Rubik's going for a little flank. He decides to try to go there. He sees the Nerubian Assassins coming for him, or Nyx Assassin. So he counterwards. He also has noticed earlier that this camp is blocked, so he kind of knows that Nyx has a ward somewhere. But notice, he missed. He missed the counter ward, right? Where is Universe's ward? It's here, okay? And look at this. Look at this. Not only does it block, but it's also just outside of, you know, the D-ward range. This is a spot. Also, I've used this spot for very similar reasons. It actually gives you decent vision, slightly worse vision, but also slightly lower chance that they D-ward it if he happens to put it like here. I illustrate this not to say you should ward here every game, but to say sometimes this sort of stuff happens and you should aim for it because of that, right? I can't just give you like a list of the best ward spots, or I guess I could. Like, you know, here the corners are also nice. Also, it's worth knowing about. These are chopped down, but if they aren't chopped down, you can kind of put one down like here, so it's kind of hidden a little bit. Practice this sort of stuff, and this is actually one of the most important ways. Most important ways you can improve by looking at your own replays, because you will find, at least I did, and I think this happens, people in different servers or different metas or whatever, people tend to ward and counter ward specifically in similar spots. Like, just for whatever reason, like, supports always would go to the same spot. So I can't tell you exactly where the supports you're playing against will ward or counter ward, but go ahead and look it up. Like, look up to see where they counter ward, and then tailor where you put your wards to adjust for that, and you can sometimes make plays like this. In this case, Rubik only had one because his first one went middle because there's an enemy enemy stealth assassin. This sort of stuff happens. The Ricky. Because of this, he actually just got this block the whole time and never had his D ward during the early game. All right, guys. See you in the next video.